Welcome back, everyone, to the Hearthstone Global Games on week 4, and we are just over halfway through day 1 of this week now. We've had some fantastic matches so far. We've got some good matches coming up as well, though, Sal.
Yes, and this one coming up is no exception to that. Philippines going up against Ukraine. Ukraine, one of the absolute powerhouses in the tournament, but Philippines last week were the vanquishers of Germany, who again are considered one of the favorites. So they know how to upset the odds, they know how to play the underdog, and if they're going to defeat the likes of Ukraine, they're going to have to do the very same thing.
Yeah, and you can just get a quick recap on what's gone on so far today. Italy taking the win over Japan, Malaysia beating out Belgium, and then as you just saw, Russia beating out Australia as well. And that was a very close series, very long series. Russia happy with just taking their time over that one.
Right.
Just like, oh, so, Pavel Stan, like, what was with not setting up lethal? There's no need to, we'd win.
Yeah.
It's like, I guess okay. Right. I mean, you can't really argue with that logic.
We were playing around Dragonfire Potion, which makes sense, but even after they saw the Dragonfire Potions happen,
we got this.
Chill.
Spirit Echoes, got them.
Exactly.
Okay, well, we can talk more about the match we have got coming up, though. It is going to be Philippines versus Ukraine. I am very much looking forward to this one. Don't even know who I'm going to be, sort of quietly cheering for in the back of my mind, as I'm a huge fan of the Philippines team with Waning Moon leading the way, Karakute, Chalk, and Staz. And then they're going to be up against Ukraine. Just a who's who of fantastic European Hearthstone players. Nyria, Dr. Hippie, Kalento, and Nick Chipper.
Yeah, and Nyria and Dr. Hippie, of course, World Championship runner-up from last year. Nyria was recently at the Bahamas event. Kalento is a player who maybe took a little bit of a step back from the competitive scene over the last 12 months or so, as he was building a very, very nice stream for himself. But over the last week or two has just gone absolutely berserk, taking rank 1 legend on 2 different servers and then winning a 128-man pro tournament in China, all within the same week. Kalento,
just why not, eh?
Just in case anyone thought Kalento didn't have it in his locker anymore, no. Better believe this man might be a full-time streamer now, more or less, but when he wants to jump back into competitive play, he can 100% still get it done.
Well, that's it. I mean, Kalento, obviously was very dominant early on in Hearthstone, and now has put himself in a position where he can just attend the tournaments he wants to attend and win. And then the rest of the time, he enjoys his stream. Obviously, Vic gets high finishes on ladder while streaming as well. He can pretty much just cherry pick exactly what he wants to do. Very similar to, like sort of Firebat's position, for example, where, 1 minute he fancies casting, then he'll compete again, then he'll run a tournament, something like that.
Just
so
annoyingly good at all of them as well. Hate them all. What a jerk.
I know, yeah. We can see the matchups coming up for you guys now. Just to go over the format again, is a team best of 5 with the 4 players on each team picking 2 classes that they can play, and then they only choose 1 to actually play within the game. The players play the opponents that's opposite them on this graphic, and in case it goes to a decider match, one of the players is put forward to actually play the ace game. So as you can see, Staz for Philippines is going to be the ace player, and Dr. Hippie for Ukraine. So they get to play twice if needed. There's also a chance that the 4th player doesn't play at all if it's just a very quick 3-0. So the first one we've got coming up is going to be Karakute versus Nick Chipper. And, what do you make of these 2 players? Because Nick Chipper, I feel, is very strange in the one that he's the one people maybe forget about on Team Ukraine, yet he's by no means, like, unheard of or, not to the same sort of level of caliber to a large extent.
Yeah, I mean, I made this point last week or 2 weeks ago, last time I was here, which is, if the weak link on your team, the weak link is Nick Chipper, you're probably doing all right as a team, because he is a very accomplished player within his own right. Karakute, on the other hand, is a player that's starting to build up a little bit of exposure now. She had a very good run back from the brink of early defeat in the recent APAC playoffs, all the way back to being just missing out on the top cut in Swiss by purely tiebreakers.
Yep.
So was able to hang with the very, very best players in the entire region, and that quite rightly, earning her a spot on this team that she represents by right. So, 2 players of similar stature, and I was about to say, take a deep breath, Raven, because there's a potential Hunter mirror going down here, but unfortunately, we're not seeing either of them.
No, I think we have seen Nick Chipper play Priest a week or so ago.
Yes.
So it's nothing new for him that he likes playing Priest as well as Hunter, of course. And I think Karakute might have been just like, I ain't playing Hunter versus Nick Chipper. got no chance. So he knows the class too well. But yeah, you know, it's going to be a Priest versus Shaman. And Shaman's like, again, we saw it from Russia just then. Like, I just don't know what that deck is or what the class is in terms of, you know, we're so used to actually seeing, well, a class normally has 1 to 2 decks normally once the meta settles down. Shaman just has like 30 cards. And you're like, well, just keep switching them in and out. They do slightly different things.
Yeah, we can
see what works.
We can do some Jades and some Elementals, some aggressive cards. We can mix all of those things together. We can put Spirit Echo on top. We can put White Eye's Ancestral Spirit on top. Like, any of this madness can come together and somehow make a Shaman deck right now. And it's testament to Ungoro and testament to the joy of a standard rotation in general, right? That when you just throw a bunch of decks out the window because they're not standard legal anymore, suddenly every class is scrambling to try and solve what the best combination is. And with the amount of flexible options with interesting effects that actually came out in the Ungoro expansion, those two things have kind of blended into the melting pot together to create this really, really like weirdly turbulent meta where things seem to be changing almost on a day-by-day basis.
That's what's weird. We're looking approximately 4 weeks into the expansion now, like, roughly.
Coincided roughly with the start of this event.
Exactly, so, yeah. So it's approximately 4 weeks. Normally by now we'd be like, okay, we know the top 3 decks maybe, and that's what they are. It just keeps changing, doesn't stop, and every single week in Hearthstone Global Games we're seeing new decks come out to play and see what they've got to offer. As always, no surprise at all, Team Philippines gathering together. They're a very close-knit team and a very close-knit community over in the Philippines when it's talking about Hearthstone. They spend a lot of time at fireside gatherings, running tournaments and playing in them as well. So no surprise they're going to be joining together for this one. Nick Chipper, on the other hand, you can see him talking to his teammates, so by no means not alone in terms of the competition, but physically potentially alone in his house. I don't know whether that's true or not. Like, I realize that could sound right. Are you alone? You know, that could sound right.
If you're interested in invading Nick Chipper's house, since he is home alone, here is his... No.
Nick Chipper's home alone. That's brilliant.
Yeah.
Even looks like, what's his name?
Macaulay Culkin.
Yeah. That's actually pretty great. Okay, but Priest versus Shaman to try and rein this back in a little bit. Nick Chipper played the Lyra Priest. I'm going to choose to call it last time we cast, which was a week and a half ago now. And it looks like he's actually going for something a little bit similar already as we get into the first game of Philippines versus Ukraine. Nick Chipper versus Kara Cute. Nick Chipper on this Priest again. Doesn't give too much away. Guess what? Cleric, Talon Priest, pretty good card. Shadow Visions. You can probably make a case for Shadow Visions in any Priest deck. But other than that, we did see him play more of a spell sort of combo-y Priest. Whereas Philippines looks like they're going for their Shaman. It has Alakir in it straight from the beginning. Normally that's discovered.
Yeah, it's definitely one of the kind of fringe choices that you can fit in. I think Elemental Shaman in general is still being experimented with in terms of a few cards, just trying to round out the deck. You know, a large chunk of the deck does build itself essentially, where, you know, the good elemental cards all get played, small minions get to hold the board early, like Firefly, you know, and leveraging that with Flame Tongue Totem, and there's just some cards in Shaman that are generally just too efficient not to play.
Yeah,
Jade Lightning, Jade Claws, for example, Maelstrom Portal as well, of course, but there are just that sprinkling of, you know, how many Blaze Callers do you play? How many Fire Elementals do you play? What exactly is your late game package? So, you know, Alakir is one of the cards that can definitely come into one of those slots, and it is what we're seeing here from Philippines.
Yeah, it's going to be cool to see how it works out in the long run. Again, just the overall makeup of this deck. Still a bit undecided on the Shaman list because it seems, you know, mildly defensive to a certain extent. There is Tar Creeper, there is a Jinyu in there as well. Fire Elemental, although normally, you know, speaks of a sort of hard push Elemental deck, still, Fire Elemental is just a good card. Like, you might just have it because it's decent. It could be a Jade sort of merger because we saw earlier today where there was sort of literally like half Elementals, half Jades in the deck. So, you know, it's still kind of all up for grabs here, whereas Nick Chipper just drawing that Golaka Crawler. I'm not sure how good do you think this tech is anymore, because especially in this format, if you don't hit the Warrior, you Rogue maybe, but I don't know. I don't know if it's worth the slot anymore.
It's a good question. We have well and truly entered the Hungry Crab meta these days in terms of the tech card. Pirates have kind of been usurped by Murlocs for the most part. Even there's kind of like the splash damage that you can catch with Galaka Crawler, where there's, you know, like the Swashbuckler in Rogue, and sometimes or always the Bloodcell Corsair and Druid, for example. There's like these one-off targets that you can hit. But those decks quite often just have auxiliary Murlocs in them as well. Like, you'd rather have Crab against Druid because there's 5 Murlocs in that deck that you can hit with it.
And a lot of the times, the Murlocs are way more impactful, right, than a random pirate. Like, you get the buff, but if you kill a War Leader, then suddenly you've saved us a lot of damage.
Yeah, I mean, if you have Galaka Crawler in your deck, it's a very, very clear indicator that you want to be playing against Pirate Warrior with this specific deck, or you don't want to be run over by Pirate Warrior coming up against this specific deck. So it's not as universally strong as some other tech cards, but it is also just a 2-mana 2/3, not the end of the world. You see here Nick Chipper just happily playing it on the board on turn 2, has a nice, comfortable board lead because of it.
Yeah, definitely good to just play on curve when your opponent kind of whiffs a little bit on the opening. J-Claws coming down for Karaku and Team Philippines here. Not even going to bother sending an attack in, no real point. If anything, it just gives the easier heal to the Priest. I think Chip has a powered shield now, but definitely feels like a Talon Priest turn. Feels like even not playing a Dragon variant when you curve out with Priest, it's just good all the time, mainly because of Talon Priest, I think.
Yes. Talon Priest just seems very strong in this scenario. It does put a coin Jade Lightning target on the board, but more importantly, you do want to protect that Cleric for long term. You know, you can either choose to just try and get some slow-paced value out of it now by picking up the heal immediately, or you can just make the higher tempo play, which protects it in the long term. And it looks like he is just going to go for the slower line, not developing the 3/4 on the board and just going for a bit of greedy value in this spot.
Yeah, I mean, there is, at this point with the Jade, the consideration that it is going to be, with the Jade Claws, sorry, like a full Jade deck, for example. And if it's like, you know, the Spirit Echoes or whatever, like we just saw from Russia, then maybe you need the draws now because you probably don't have time for them later on. So you just draw into as much of your deck as possible, have those Dragonfires on curve, or as and when you need them, and then make one big push. Because I doubt you're going to be able to rush it down if the deck's as defensive as we saw from Russia.
It's very resilient, yeah, if that was to be the deck. But, of course, they're going to get the news very soon that this is going to be more elemental-based. And I did like you talking about, you know, exactly how aggressive is Elemental Shaman, right? I think that is the dilemma. I think it's, you know, generally, you know, a board control or pure control deck for, you know, the early turns, but then it very quickly swings with, like, Blaze Caller, for example, right? Because suddenly there's just a 6/6 on the board that's done 5 damage. It might be sitting there alongside a Tolvir Stone Shaper or a Fire Elemental or whatever else, and suddenly there's just like a 2-turn lethal setup out of nowhere where you just have all this power on board. So they can afford to play the game very, very slowly, but when you're up against a Dragon Priest, as we now get the news that this is confirmed from the Draconid Operative, you don't have too much time to hang around because although we saw Dragon Priest resoundingly defeated as the king of value in the previous series, it still gets the job done very nicely, and most decks are forced to play the aggressor against Dragon Priest.
Yeah, especially when this sort of version of Dragon Priest so far seems very much like it's Priest with a few dragons in it, as opposed to trying to do anything too crazy with the dragons overall.
Right.
It's more like, yeah, you know, of course, Operative is a fantastic card. Probably going to be Nether Spite. Probably going to be Twilight Drakes as well. But in general, it's not like old Dragon Priest used to want to curve out, you know, like with big minions and then just beat someone down. This one has way more options available to it, and he's way more flexible, I think. Maybe not as powerful, but just more flexible in general, so you don't need to rely on, I need to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Right. I mean, you know, essentially in the long run, it's just value Priest. It's just the fact that some of the highest value cards in the game for Priest just happen to be dragons, right? Like you're playing Shadow Visions because it's insane value. It gets you an extra card. You're playing Elise because it gets you 5 extra cards, more so if you then Shadow Visions the pack. You're playing Nether Spite and Historian and Draconid Operative not because they're dragons, but because they continue that theme of just putting extra cards into your hand and into your deck.
Tolvir Stone Shaper is going to come down for Karakute here, so the Taunt Wall is live. Interesting trade in there to kill off the Crawler, because this now opens up a clean kill for the Priest of the Feast on this turn. That makes it a little bit more difficult because there's the Divine Shield on the Warden that probably wants to be procced by the Cleric.
Yeah, a little bit awkward, and Philippines will be happy to see that there isn't any Shadow of Pain or such like effect coming down this turn just to snipe out that 3/5 clean, which means it will have to be busted through the hard way, which makes it an incredibly strong drop to have on turn 4. And we've talked quite a lot about this card and its relative strengths and merits while we've been casting Elemental Shaman games over the 4 weeks or so. And in this situation, it's about as strong as it gets. It's massively powerful on curve, it's contesting the board, and it's not breaking up the Elemental curve because there isn't a Servant of Kalamos in hand ready and waiting to go. So,
and I think as well, if you're going to go down the road of playing sort of Jade Elementals to a certain extent, then it's more likely, especially with cards like Tar Creeper as well, that you have like other stuff to fill out or cheaper minions to fill out that 5 slot to not rely on Kalamos. At the start of the expansion, we saw a lot of, I want to Servant of Kalamos on 5 every single time, whereas now I feel like it's okay, Servant of Kalamos, no need to turn up exactly as we're talking about you. He heard us. So this does stop the Servant of Kalamos, but the main point being there is more options available. The Jinyus, there's the Firefly into a Jade Lightning, which still procs the either Servant of Kalamos next turn, or you can just go into Fire Elemental and still have a Flame Elemental in hand to proc the Kalamos the turn after.
Yeah, so just going to be Jade Lightning and almost certainly Firefly here to give himself flexibility. Of course, if there's a Fire Elemental target on the board next turn, he can just go ahead and Fire Elemental it. If there's not a good Fire Ele turn, then what else does he do with his turn at this point? And that's why I would like to see the Firefly come down, just to add that level of flexibility. But they might just evaluate this board state now and say, you know what? I'm pretty sure I Fire Ele like every single time against this.
Yeah, like regardless. I think the difficulty there is the weapon's gone now. If the weapon was there, then you'd probably always Fire Elemental because you can pretty much kill anything that's played along with the minions. But with the weapon gone, it's a little bit less likely. So the Firefly does come down. Now Nick Chipper has a few options for himself. Still no dragon to proc the operative. He can get a dragon to proc the operative next turn, but can't quite squeeze it in with the mana he has available to him. Going to start off with a heal. Draw the second Priest of Feast in the deck, go for the Tar Creeper, and just try and slow the game down again. I think Nick Chipper's happy playing at the slowest possible pace here with this deck.
Yeah, and just trying to draw as many cards as he can, because the Netherspite Historian, as these big turns are now going to come out from Elemental Shaman, because this is where the deck does come into its own. If they suddenly nail you with the Fire Ele into Blaze Caller into Kalamos curve, you're not going to have time to mess about and play a 2-mana 1/3 during that time. So he already is into that period of the game, so he would like to find just, natural dragons that he can use to activate the Draconid Operative from here. So you saw him just cycling as hard as he possibly could that turn, playing for value, trying to get the resources he needs. He picked up a Dragonfire Potion in the meantime, which you pointed out was going to be a very strong card. And now it's looking like Ukraine will win a battle for resources here, although that Servant of Kalamos might have something to say about it.
Yeah, there's some big ones that can come off the Servant. Kalamos himself being probably the most overall impactful. This Cleric just going to live forever as a 1/7 here. The second Golaka Crawler going to do absolutely nothing in this instance. This might be a turn for a heal and then potentially a lease. Just to get something to challenge the Fire Elemental down and get that value in. But the issue with drawing all these cards is if you draw the Elise pack, you can't really play it.
Right. It's either that or just go Historian Draconid Operative now that you do potentially have time. Operative number 2 is available. Primordial Drake is a big swing. Malagos, probably not too likely. It's not like we're playing a Priest Mirror here or anything, so Operative number 2 looks solid. I can see the merits of the Drake as well, especially since you're playing against a deck that has a lot of Fireflies hanging around in it.
Yeah, I think I really like the Drake because the Operative, well, what if you just don't draw another Dragon for 3 turns? It's kind of just dead in your hand anyway.
Sure.
And also as well, having the Drake available to play next turn is very, very nice indeed. Let's discover Volcano, Alakir, and Kalamos. Unfortunately, I don't think outside of Lyra, there's other elementals in... Radiant Elemental.
Radiant Elemental and Lyra, yeah.
Yeah, so... There's a consideration for Kalamos, but that's to be very, very forced.
Unless he's jammed a Light Spawn in his deck.
Why not?
Yeah.
Yeah, them. If only could play Ragnaros Light Lord in Priest. That'd be insane.
Servant of Kalamos is pretty gross if you do actually start looking at Elemental Priest. I mean, Elemental Priest is garbage, but Servant of Kalamos itself is just like, hey, free Lyras all day, every day.
Yeah, pretty much.
You just kind of go off. It's pretty nuts. Every other part of the deck is trash, though. You do eventually...
It's a slight drawback.
You do end up literally putting Light Spawn in the deck, which is just never a good feeling.
Or you could just make a Priest deck with Lyra already in it and be happy.
Yeah.
Okay, another Kalimos. Well, not another one, sorry. Nick Chip had the option for Kalimos, but Kalimos an option now for Karakyu and Team Philippines. Frost Elemental, not a terrible choice because the freeze can be very powerful against Dragon Priest because they've got such big minions, but it is hard to look past a second Kalimos in the deck.
It is.
So much value.
Especially, I mean, Philippines don't know this, but Ukraine have just been handed the information that Kalimos is not in the hand right now. So they don't actually have to play around the Kalimos effects. Now, obviously that information isn't available to the Philippines because we just saw it off the operative, but it means that potentially they will play into some board states and say, hey, you know what? 2 turns ago, 3 turns ago, they didn't have that Kalimos. What are the odds of them having it right now? But of course, they now Ukraine have to account for the fact that there is a servant card in the hand as well now, which could be that Kalimos still.
Yeah, and it's reasonably likely as well. Needs to be a point now where Nick Chipper decides whether Dragonfire Potion is worth or not. And it's definitely a tough one. We saw Team Russia taking the time trying to get the most value out of it. But against Shaman here, it's going to be a rough one because you've got to weigh up if you think there's a Bloodlust in the deck and then you just die, you know, which is, I've heard, a bit of a problem when you want to win games. And also the fact that this board state specifically only has the operative on for Nick Chipper's side of the board, which means he takes no drawback from this Dragonfire Potion, yet clears the board. So I really like this potion timing here.
Yeah, he also has the Primordial Drake in hand, which can answer, you know, Firefly, Flame Elemental, Totem type boards, but wouldn't interact quite well with that deck, that board that he was staring at just then. So if there is one more annoying board state, like say even Kalimos summon Elementals to try and set up Bloodlust that way, you have the answer to that, to not die to Bloodlust over 2 turns. And I think that's the crucial consideration when you decide as to whether you want to play around Bloodlust. I see a lot of players like panic, like, oh, I have to clear here because otherwise I'm going to lose to Bloodlust. And then the next turn they just, you know, your opponent just goes, 1 drop, 2 drop, Totem, and an extra thing on the end, and then suddenly you're dead to Bloodlust again and you can't deal with it.
Yeah. Whereas if you just push damage and hope they didn't have Bloodlust, you might just win. Okay, well, it's all on Team Philippines' side now. Kalimos is active and available on a mana book. It's a tough one. With Kalimos, I think you just have to go for the 1/1s, right? Are we going to see the glorious hopping elementals?
They are adorable.
Oh!
Yay!
Look how happy they are! They're just having a good time. And now this Drake is going to appear and slaughter them all.
Oh, Ukraine, you murderers.
It's a bit generalization there. I was going to say.
Sorry about that.
Just Nick Chipper's the murderer, not Ukraine.
Yeah.
The Drake does come down, clear the whole board, even trading off the Draconid Operative to clear off the Kalimos, or the rest of Kalimos, should I say, not taking any chances. And you know what? With this kind of value hand, don't blame him at all.
Yep.
He could have gone like more aggressive. Why? Like, he's just never going to run out of juice here at all.
I mean, we just had this exact conversation with Pavel, who was playing this matchup with different archetypes of the classes from the other side. Was in control of the Shaman, was completely dominant in the value battle. I asked him the question of, why did you just not set up lethal over several turns? Why should I? I was going to win anyway. Just grind him out.
Yeah, like, it's one of those things where it's like one of the other levels of Hearthstone learning is you can choose, might not be the best play you can make, but you can choose to not give your opponent a good play himself if you think he doesn't have anything good.
Right.
It's like we saw, purposely playing the Black Knight. Obviously, we knew that there was a Black Knight in hand, but purposely missing the taunt, so suddenly Black Knight's just a 4/5. Has that kind of impact there. But as we see the Volcano clear up the board, just a small spattering of minions to the board for Karakyu here. Nothing too dangerous, especially when Ukraine's on 28 health.
It's like they've just flicked a paintbrush of minions at the board.
Yeah, so you flick it with your fingers on the air. Yeah.
Hey, there it is. There is, in fact, a Bloodlust in the deck, but Ukraine, again, have just got the knowledge that Bloodlust is not in hand. There is almost certainly never 2 in the deck, unless it is the super heavy token deck with Call in the Finishers and Primal Fin Totem, which isn't a Moloch deck, it's just a token deck, and those are very efficient token cards. That quite often plays double Bloodlust, but up against Elementals, they'll know that there is just 1, and that 1 is not in the hand right now.
Yeah, really great. Again, additional side knowledge from the operative is that it tells you what's available and what's not, especially with the one-off. So pretty cool there for Nick Chipper and Team Ukraine. Philippines, though, this would really be a big win for these because they're currently 1-1 in their group. And if they went 2-1, whilst beating Ukraine. That is huge because Ukraine are currently 2-0. So if they handed them the first loss, suddenly they even their score up with Ukraine. I'm not 100% on game score specifically, but evening it up with Ukraine this early on is actually pretty huge for these guys and could be the ones that start off the upset in this group, I think.
And it would mean that their 2 wins as well would come against Ukraine and Germany. Those would be the 2 victories. Which,
and then they lose to everyone else. And you're like, "Wah!"
Those are 2 pretty massive scalps to have under your belt at that point, and really make a statement for these players. One of the big opportunities of global games as a whole is for players from countries like Philippines who don't necessarily get a huge amount of Western exposure to just say, individually, hey, we're great players. Please, invite us to some of your tournaments, pay attention to us, watch our streams. Major organizations that are out there, hey, we're great players. Please pick us up and send us out to represent you at these events. And if you can bag Ukraine and Germany back to back, you do
those plebs.
You do start to make 1 or 2 waves.
Yeah, can't blame them at all. Dragonfire Potion going to come into the hand for Nick Chipper, and this is where you kind of start asking yourself the sort of half weird, half tough questions. My opponent only has 2 cards. Do I Dragonfire this and then just play like Crawler or play Priest of Feast? I win the board, and they have 2 cards, 3 on the draw. Like, am I ever going to lose it at that point? Is it worth the Dragonfire now as opposed to maybe wait? They know Bloodlust is in the deck. So, suddenly you just give value to Bloodlust. You might get more value trades. This totem alone is giving some trouble to Nick Chipper and Ukraine by just creating extra damage out of nowhere. So he's going to go halfway house there, just Shadow Word Pain, the totem which providing the most damage on the board, and develop a bit of a board himself. So this is like, oh, whoa!
Wow!
Oh, look if he left the totem.
If he left the Flame Tongue totem.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, also, just, realistically, he's used a Shadow of Pain as well. He does have that Hex, but of course, the Bookworm isn't active right now with no Dragon in hand. So Alakir the Windlord, of course, notoriously vulnerable to Shadow of Pain. 8-mana minion being removed by Shadow of Pain is absolutely savage for you. So Philippines might just feel like they got the green light to try and get some Alakir value here, but it's not even particularly great on this board. Can take care of the Talon Priest at least, but that 3/9 is still going to be a pretty big problem.
Yeah, at this point, this Glaka Crawler is not looking too great. Doesn't kill an elemental. I imagine at some point there's going to be a crab that comes out in the future of Hearthstone that's kill a thing with a tribe on it. Just anything that's got a tag, it just insta-kills.
No, definitely not. You just play that in every deck.
Yep.
That'd be all the game was. It'd just be that thing. It'd just be that thing.
But
but
Galacticrawl doesn't have a tag.
Okay.
It's immune to itself.
Okay.
Okay, so the Bookworm is live now with the Ysera being drawn, and now the Crawler gets its justice. Can go down relatively safety onto the board.
Sweet Just. Did he just heal the 1/2?
So.
He just healed. Oh my god.
Wow. Wow.
The BM from Nick Chipper. Look at that grin on his face as well. He is loving it right now.
Are those a pair of feet in the
They are.
background? Okay.
They are indeed.
I had to just double check. I saw something moving. I had to make sure Nick Chipper wasn't signaling for help or something.
Please don't draw attention to feet on the internet, Raven. That's a dangerous slope.
I wouldn't know.
Okay.
Jade Lightning. Just nothing feels like it's going to be enough now. Look at these are all low impact, highly defensive tools, minus the Jade Lightning. But the healing just doesn't matter when the board is so much in Nick Chipper's favor here. And we can see, he's got an Alakir of his own. He's got Ysera. He has a Dragonfire Potion. Absolute worst case scenario. If anything like big comes out again, like a true Kalimos, then Hex just deals with it very, very easily here. When you're healing your opponent's minions for no reason, when you're not even on full life, you're feeling confident.
He threw out the preemptive well played, and then healed his opponent's minion when he did actually have value in healing his own face. So some definite let's try and tilt our opponent's tactics going on here from Ukraine.
Imagine if he loses.
If they're not just purely trying to entertain themselves. And Philippines here are setting up a potential Bloodlust lethal if there's a top deck, but Dragonfire Potion can quickly make a mess of this board. So can just Alakir on its own, honestly.
Yep. I'm just thinking, what if Nick Chipper loses by 2 health? It'd be so great. But I doubt he's going to. Dragonfire Potion going to just ensure this clear for Nick Chipper here. Only the Priest of the Feast taking damage is really nice as well. Bookworm can clear up the Jinyu if wanted. Or Nick Chipper might just not care at this point.
maybe slightly better against like spell damage Lightning Storm to trade in that situation. That's kind of the niche world that you're living in.
Niche world if we're in America.
The niche chipper world that you're living in. Don't just sigh at me, jeez.
What? I'm saying that our friends over the pond.
Oh, okay.
They say Shaman's bad.
Shaman is bad. I'll tell you what is bad. H. Please stop saying H. That's awful.
Cool whip.
Cool.
Is that what I can say?
Say cool. Say Shah. Say Mun. Say
Shay,
Shaman.
Okay. We're having as much as Stick Chipper. So this game is going to be very, very difficult for Philippines. It's pretty much looking over. We can see it just from, or at least in Nick Chipper's mind, it's over, you know, just from the way he's actually been playing this game out. Maelstrom not really going to be enough. Philippines going to stay in the game, though. You know, we don't know what's left in the deck. There could be, you know, some cards that might dig them out of this awkward situation. Maelstrom into something pretty godlike would help as well. Let's clear up the Twilight Drake as well, so I think it's a battle for the board at least.
On your scale of godliness, where exactly does Arcane Anomaly off Maelstrom Portal lie?
10 out of 100.
Okay. Wow, that's a big scale. I guess it would be though, right?
Yeah. Godliness.
Seems legit.
Only 100 though. Anything more silly.
Lethal now cleanly set up. Got Nightmare to go along with the Alec here, and it looks like Nick Chipper's confidence has been well placed here, and despite all this BM, his comeuppance is not going to appear. Philippines are just going to scoop to not being able to deal with that Ysera. No great surprise, and a comfortable victory for Ukraine in Game 1, and it's been a fairly comfortable run for Ukraine overall so far.
Yeah, absolutely amazing from them so far, as you said, and that game didn't really look like there was any moment where Ukraine were in a rough spot at all. You got off the early minions, got the elites down pretty easily, and I think it was just the Dragonfire to do that one clear on the board, and it's like, you are never getting this back. And I think it all came from the greed plays earlier on of the card draws. You used to have so many options available that you're like, I clear once, and look at all these tools I have. You are never getting the board back after this.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like an extra 3-4 and the +3 health on the board at that position would have really won the game in the same spot anyway. Like, you know, they were, one card deeper at the end of the game because of the play they did. They used Powered Shield as well that they would have ended up cycling anyway, but still, the line was consistent. They just went for a huge resource advantage, and you saw that resource advantage pay off almost perfectly because the hand size was almost empty at the end for Ukraine.
Versus like 8 or something.
No, I mean, it got down to the point where they had like 2 cards to spare plus their board position against an empty hand for the Philippines. So they timed their resource gain and then timed their push to take advantage of that resource gain very well.
Yeah, the next game we've got coming up is going to be Stars versus Calento. As we mentioned earlier, Calento just hot off the back of some fantastic success this past week with two rank 1 placements on ladder and a win in a 128-man pro invitational in China as well. So absolutely great performance from him. No true surprise that he's going to be rocking the Paladin today, because it's a deck or a class should I say, that he went to day 1, I think, actually, of the expansion. You just went, yeah, I'm going to try out some Paladin stuff. And we've seen all sorts from him.
We have, yeah. And I feel like this is kind of a stance that really fits Calento's personality here, because his Paladin has been paired with Warlock. So the read that you are very clearly giving off to your opponents at that point is, okay, Warlock's probably the weakest class in the game right now, so he's probably going to play Paladin. Now, in a lot of situations, you'd say that's too obvious a read, we should mix it up. It feels like Calento just went, I don't care how obvious that read is, I'm just going to play Paladin and beat them. Like, what's the problem?
Well, I think as well, Paladin's in the spot where it can as well, because the class is so powerful. See some information, we talked a lot about Calento, but Staz is, you know, is a very well-known player in his own region as well, and outside of that, he did actually play in WESG as well, and had a good placement there. So top 5 earners all time in Hearthstone because of that. Because of that placement.
And with his earnings, he could buy at the very least 125,738 Hearthstone packs. In the US, anyway.
Or he could buy Stan Sifka the best present ever and 625,000 bananas.
Or he could buy just enough paper clips to hold together all of Lorinda's notes.
Yeah, maybe an extra million.
Yeah, maybe an extra million on top. Maybe we'll get there.
Yeah, whereas, Stars is actually a super strong player. And again, I talk a lot about the Philippines. I think, Lorinda kind of mirrors my expectation of that group as well. That, they're really solid Hearthstone players, really close-knit. They do practice together quite often as well. So this is the moment, I feel, for Philippines as a whole to break out more into the scene.
Well, not so far in this series, at least, because that was a pretty crushing 1-0 victory early on for Ukraine, which I do just need to force myself every time. I just want to put the in front of it. I don't know what it is about my brain.
Stop it.
Ukraine. But this matchup now, Kalento with Paladin going to come up against the Mage, and it's going to be dependent heavily on variance from both sides, of course. How aggressive the Paladin is. It's basically going to be a sliding scale on the matchup, very much from like how aggressive the Paladin needs to be and how quickly the Mage needs to stop it, based on which deck is which, right?
Yep.
Because if the Paladin deck packs a lot of healing, they can often go for the Outlast plan. If they don't, then they have to go aggression. There's, of course, Eye for an Eye, which factors into this matchup hugely these days if it's an Ice Block Mage, which it almost certainly is these days. And is Staz just staring down the camera right now? I think it feels like he's staring into my soul.
You love it, don't you?
I do.
I agree with you on the assessment of this. This does look like the Discover Mage, and I've played a lot of Discover Mage the past couple of weeks, and I genuinely love playing against Paladins that don't play the healing, because there's nothing to think about at that point. Obviously, you don't know that this
a damning indictment of the deck. Freeze Mage for people that are good at drawing Mana Worm. Confirmed.
And I am good at drawing Mana Worm.
There we go.
No, I mean, suddenly, if you know the deck is the control deck, does it contain, 2 Forbidden Healings? Is there a Ragnaros in there? Does it contain the, oh my lord. Ivory Knight, for example.
Okay.
These it might do and it might not, raises a lot of awkward questions as to when you're supposed to burst and when you're not. Whereas if you get a pretty good read that it's just the aggressive line with barely no healing, no Ragnaros, you're like, well, I know how much damage I need to do to him, and then you can make your game plan around that as opposed to going, well, I'll go for it and hope he doesn't have Forbidden Healing at this point.
Oh yes, Staz is most definitely a real Discover Mage player. Mana Worm, Arcanologist, Frostbolt, Arcane Intellect are the first 5 cards drawn. Yeah, that is why people play this deck.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
Yeah.
It's pretty good. And then the next few cards are just going to be all the burn spells.
Exactly.
Get them.
Yeah.
I do love this deck so much. And because all these master accounts with golden cards, you get to see Golden Maneve. Hopefully.
If the game even gets that far, because if Kalento cannot put a stop to this board development, he's going to just take a ton of damage over the next few turns.
Yeah, and this is such a good position to be in with this deck. You've got the Mana Worm down, you've got the Arcanologist, and no matter what gets played this turn from Kalento, even with the coin more likely, Frostbolt just deals with it. And adds more damage to the Mana Worm, and you start to go really, really hard on the damage going forward. This could be a huge problem. Do you think he just has to play Rock Pool and pass and wait for coin True Silver?
Must move quickly.
I mean, does that even really get you anywhere if you do that? Your Rock Pool just gets value traded, and then what are you True Silvering? A couple of minions that have already got a value trade?
Or you can just conk it.
Sure. But then, if it's just trade and ping, for example, then even then it's not even a good consecration setup, right? I think any other play that you make apart from this one is just far too reliant on very situational things happening to be able to get you any value.
Well, the Frostbolt does clear up the Aldar. Quality is available now for Kalento. Not going to do much at the moment. And now Murloc War Leader, a bit more likely to survive, purely because of the combination of the Aldor reduction onto the Arcanologist and the Frostbolt used as well. So there he is. Golden Medivh. But the options here are a little bit different. There's Arcanologist and a ping. Maybe you preemptively ping the War Leader or just trade away the Mana Worm and call it a day. Or you could actually just go for the Arcane Intellect to get some cycle on the go, but it doesn't quite fill out the curve that well unless you're drawing, say, a Babbling Brook.
Yeah, Arcanologist ping definitely seems reasonable. He's going to end up with a hand massively full of secrets here, which do clog up your hand for quite a while, because the ice blocks themselves, of course, get stuck in your hand over time. Ice barriers, even when you have board control, if you were to draw the second barrier, it might just not get activated in that spot either. So we'll clog up his hand a little bit, but no real hand size concerns for him just yet. And now Kalento is just going to have to try and get a grip back on this board over a couple of turns with the True Silver. And this is going to give Staz the freedom now that he needs to just start drawing some cards with Arcane Intellect. And that's the joy of the early game package in this deck, right? Your goal is to get the early game package down. Then even if you don't just, snowball a Mana Worm to victory, which you very rarely do in this deck, you at least buy yourself so much time because your opponent has to spend time dealing with it, and then you just go, okay, cool. Time to just, take a back seat now, draw some cards. I'll just gather all the burn I need. My Mana Worm and Arcanologist did, 8 to 10 damage in the early game. I'm just going to get the job done.
Well, already look at this, right? So next turn, Stad's only going to be 2 turns away from Medivh. He can just play an Ice Block, go for Valley, just to face. I'm talking like really I'm just talking really simple terms here, which is 3 damage, puts him to 20. And then he has 2 Fireballs, Medivh, and then whatever burn he draws, there's still Violence Portals, there's still another Frostbolt, there's still 2 Glyphs in the deck, and a Pyroblast. So it just has almost like too much damage to even try and heal through. That overall plan, just based on what's in hand now, combined with the fact that Kalento still doesn't have too much available. The War Leader draws really nice with the Valfin Inquisitor now, so that really helps out, especially with the Mega Sword to follow up. So this, I guess, is the turn where Kalento needs to make one push and try and get control of this game. But if he doesn't get it right now, like the battle plan looks pretty clear for me from stats. Yeah, see, there you go, Violence. Just add to the damage.
The consideration here from Philippines, though, is, yeah, okay, their damage is just starting to save face. Like, it's starting to just add up to the number of health your opponent has, which is a pretty good indication. But as you said, it's much, much more complicated when your opponent is potentially playing healing cards, which they don't know yet, right? Like, I mean, even we don't know yet. There's an equality in this deck. Like, there could be
there could be, yeah.
There could be any amount of healing coming out from Ukraine here, so Stas has to consider, like, what's my highest win rate percentage? Can I just start burning face? Do I beat healing if that happens? What happens if I just continue to control the board here? Just play a secret and Medivh's Valet the 2-3. I'm still in a reasonable board position at that point. Or if I just go all in on board control and just go Fireball Ping this turn and really just shut down War Leaders, shut down Gentle Mega Swords. All of those, honestly, are viable solutions to this problem. I can see any of them being a realistic play.
Yeah, and even the one thing about the burn route is that because you have Medivh, you can kind of do the burn and create minions at the same time, develop board and go crazy. So looks like Stats is going to go for one of the plays you mentioned with the Fireball Ping, and as you said, this kind of locks out War Leader to a certain extent, locks out Mega Sword, almost certainly. You can Hero Power Mega Sword, but is that really good enough to beat this mage? I wouldn't feel comfortable doing it.
Well, he does need to start generating some kind of Murloc presence on the board, and he's already played a good chunk of early game Murlocs that just got really just gobbled up by the Mana Worm early on, and the Frostbolt that was in the hand. So yeah, I think this is just what you come down to. You just try and find something to help protect and stick your Murlocs to the board, and then snowball the War Leader next turn, because this is Philippines' Firelands turn. So if Firelands comes down, there's a good chance that it hits the 5/4. And that means you're stuck with some minions on the some Murlocs on the board that you can then push damage with the War Leader afterwards.
Yeah, I think Kalento would have been really looking for Divine Shield as an option here, because another card that's good on 7 is Flame Strike. So, and that's why the War Leader wasn't played. If War Leader gets played, then like Flame Strike pretty much just ruins him anyway.
Yeah.
Whereas if Divine Shield was hit from Kalento, then his Murlocs, there you go, would have survived. And then could have gone with the War Leader. So similar idea here with the Death Rattles. They're not going to be Murlocs, but it's definitely something. But again, all the options here. We were talking about this earlier, the power of Medivh's Valet. Card's just insane. Like,
it's pretty nuts.
A 2-mana Fire Elemental effect, and it's still 2/3 on the board as well. Absolutely crazy when combined with Mage Ping too.
Yes. And Kodo pickup now from Kalento. More nods to this being a slightly more controlling list. Now, there is a particular list that is attributed to Kalento quite famously for Paladin in the new meta, which is one of the decks that he hit rank 1 with earlier in the season, as he's hit rank 1 on numerous occasions this season, it seems, which was this kind of list with the one Stampeding Kodo teched in. I believe he tweeted a screenshot saying, "Oh yeah, I have this new build I'm going to keep secret for now," and it just had the Kodo in the screenshot in the background of him hitting rank 1.
I hope that was on purpose.
Yeah, very possibly.
It's like spot the secret. It's like when Blizzard put like small things on their website that aren't too obvious when an expansion's been announced to like pick up on it. I think Kalento tried to do that. I think Kodo Hero Power is fine here. You have to position it around Meteor though.
How long can you wait to really get value out of this War Leader, though, is the question.
I think one more turn's fine.
Okay. Okay.
Because the problem is the Valley just deals with War Leader just straight away. Just Valley pay, like the trade ping. Whereas this now it has sort of a different question from the Philippines and potentially sets up for an even bigger War Leader turn. So now they can be War Leader into either Consecrate or True Silver.
Yeah. Medivh is an issue. Ukraine do have the Equality Consecration, which can deal with any kind of board state that comes out, unless there's crazy Death Rattle minions coming out of the ATS charges. But they are starting to run out of resources little by little, and just the stability of the mage with the ice blocks, etc., and all the removal that they, the removal that just doubles up as face damage, essentially. Staz very clearly went down the line of trying to control the board when he went Fireball Ping on turn 6, as opposed to just committing to damage, like you may have suggested. So he's very much committed to this line of board control, and that means all this, all these resources in hand right now are earmarked to potentially be removal. So Ukraine can't hang about here, because if all this stuff gets played out as just pure removal to the board, he's going to run out of pressure very quickly.
Yeah. I wonder if this is a turn you can try and get away with Murloc War Leader and Finger. If you place it right as well. Because this has the dual benefit of getting value from the War Leader, and the Finger's protected from Flame Strike as well. So this is one of those weird sort of half protections where Finger won't die to most things.
Yeah,
the combination of stealth and 5 health.
Right, you'd need to like Frostbolt or Valet the War Leader first, and then Flame Strike the board afterwards to get the clear.
Is asking a lot.
It is, yes.
Glyph now, so we could see that play if Glyph goes into Flame Strike. That would actually be crazy. I'd actually probably just end the game.
Probably?
Yeah.
You think so? Yeah, I think that's a fairly safe bet.
Well, what if he draws Tyrion off the top, for example, right? Come on. Polymorph.
Yeah. I see you've played this game before. Yeah.
Once or twice, I must admit.
Excuse me, you are
There is the Medivh's Valet, and now the Firelands portal is going to come out on the Kodo here. Just trying to build as much of a board presence as he possibly can, and that is a pretty sick Barongeddon as far as it goes. It did take out some of the board, but it's significantly softened up the board state for Ukraine here.
Yeah, it does help just a little bit. It can take down the Hallowed Zeal. The problem is, how exactly are you looking at dealing with Geddon? Is there a world in which you actually just equality, trade in Finger, but then conk for the rest of the minions off and push? It's really wonky, but you need the Murloc draws, but you also don't want the Murloc draws to then just trade away into the board, right?
Right.
So it feels weird, but
I'm thinking of like weird methods to try and get a value trade with the Finger in case it pulls War Leader number 2. But in that case, you end up equalitying afterwards, which just doesn't really make any sense after you've pulled the additional minions. So yeah, this looks pretty
the plants
solid.
also cleared this up fine.
Yeah, the consecration to push was a bit weird sounding because you're just pushing with just 2/1/1s.
Yeah,
not
sure,
really a huge impact. So consecration probably just a better resource to have around while your opponent still has 2 ATS charges available to them. And we talked about in the first series we cast together, ideally you would love to just cast Meteor and Pyroblast and Firelands Portal every turn with this, but a lot of the time you are forced to cast Glyphs and Secrets and Arcane Intellect.
Yeah, exactly.
So consecration can still be a useful card to deal with those sorts of board states.
I would just Meteor this board.
100%.
Yeah, just Meteor it, clear the Murlocs off, get a 6-drop, go.
Cruel Dynamancer. Doesn't seem too powerful. There's Mana Worms, there's 2/3s. There's a 7/7 potentially in there as well. But
It's minions you discarded this game.
oh yeah, you're right.
observe and reflect.
Sorry, I've never played with Cruel
I can't even
Dynamancer.
defend you on this one.
Sorry. I've never
Minions
played.
that are dead. If it was minions that died, that would be pretty sick.
Would it though?
It'd be better than minions you've discarded from a different deck that doesn't discard cards.
Well, you have a little bit more control over which minions you discard, right? So you can try and set it up. I mean, the card's terrible either way is the big issue. But yeah.
Oh, there's a Ragnaros Light Lord. So this changes everything now. There's now the Philippines actually really have to think about how they want to kill Ukraine here.
Right.
So it's more than likely going to have to be an Alexstrasza kill if they see Ragnaros. Because that's the trick, right? If Ragnaros comes down, then you can just deal with Rag, then go with Alexstrasza and probably win the game from there.
2 glyphs in hand, which can add up to a good chunk of extra burn for Philippines in this spot, but there's still some big threats in the deck. Now they've seen cards like Equality being played, cards like Primordial Drake being played. They know that this is, you know, one of the builds that Kalento is kind of famous for, where there is a lot of late game value in the deck as well. So now you have to wonder, from Staz's perspective, from the Philippines' perspective, whether they can even just go for an all-out face burn plan here, or whether they need to use those glyphs to potentially just pick up extra answers to the high-value minions. And I think that's why we're seeing them being reserved, just not used for turn after turn after turn, because the longer they wait to use these glyphs, the more efficient answers they can possibly get to the board.
Yeah, it's all just, you know more and more the choice you need to make.
Exactly.
Right? I mean, to me, it just looks like 20 damage and 2 Pyroblasts. That's all I see when I see those glyphs in hand. But, you know, to the average Joe, I guess, or the average Staz, might be something a bit more in-depth, which is completely reasonable to deal with some of these guys. I mean, you know, if you've seen a Drake, you know Tyrion's somewhere in the deck, right? Like, it would be crazy not to play that card. Maybe even Curator as well.
I think we even saw Curator early on in the Mulligan, maybe?
Oh, did we?
I'm not 100% sure on that, but yeah, I mean,
it makes sense,
there's
right?
Murlocs,
Like,
there's Dragons, there's Beasts, it just makes sense. And Curator is a card that's really been dragged back into prominence by cards like Primordial Drake. You know, the fact that there's just like a universal strong late-game dragon that just curves out from Curator.
Drake just swapped it for Azure Drake, right?
Yeah,
Like,
exactly. And Eye for an Eye has been picked up, and that is giving Kalento here the signal to just be aggressive, because if he can deal 8 damage and exactly 8 more damage, then he has the game locked up, more or less, with Eye for an Eye, unless defensive Alexstrasza comes down. If defensive Alexstrasza comes down, he probably feels like he can just out-heal the damage at this point.
Yeah, I think as the mage, this is the point you don't want to be in, where, one, the Paladin's healed to a reasonable set amount of health, and has the board, and has actually just pressured your own health quite a lot. See, there's one Pyro.
There's the one Pyro.
Whereas, you know, if Philippines run at 28 health at this moment in time, then you can play a longer game, you know, take it a bit slower and try and deal with these threats. But now, just the Drake alone, to be honest, as a 4-8 is actually a threat in itself in terms of just proccing the block soon. There is the Ice Pyro still in hand, though, so that's an additional 8. I like the Pyro. Just get him. Pyro the Rag.
That's the problem, right? If you take Pyro, then you have to commit to Pyroing the Rag right away, right? Because you can't fish for the second glyph for an answer. No. You have to just go straight ahead.
Unless you're really confident you're going to get polymorph.
Right. The unfortunate issue right now is that there is 4 plus 2 on the board, there is 2 in the hand from a Consecration, and there is an Eye for an Eye in play coming up very soon. So that is still the magic number of 8 that Kalento would have been looking for.
Primordial Glyph into break the game, get Flare.
Nice.
There you go.
All right.
Got to find those lines, Sol.
Primordial Glyph into Cruel Dynamancer, which summons a random Flare that you've discarded this game.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That's how that card works, right?
Someone's a random card that was discarded from someone else's game playing the wrong class. You know, I think that's the word, and they just couldn't quite fit it on. Exactly. So let's try to simplify it. Grime Street Protector, normally a pretty good minion. It's probably like the second one below the what am I looking for? Below the legendary taunt picks, right? It's like the legendaries, then this guy.
Yes. And by the legendaries, we mean, of course, like Tyrion and Sunkeeper Tarim immediately, and then situationally Burn Bristle. You know, I think in a lot of situations you would take Grime Street Protector over Burn Bristle. In this spot, I think, particularly. And interesting, Kalento here, by making this play and not just pushing the opponent to 1 and playing the Eye for an Eye, he's basically allowing himself more reach to beat defensive Alexstrasza. Yeah. Because if he just went to face and didn't develop his board and just consecrated and played the Eye for an Eye, then defensive Alex comes down. He's actually, his opponent's back up at 15, but he's also fallen behind on the board just to that 8-8 coming down.
Well, one of the things as well is because the taunt minions are on board, Philippines would literally have to ping face or something to proc it. And they're probably just not going to, right? You know, like they know how it works. So it gives them more time to defensive Alexstrasza, right? Anyway?
Well, yeah, but the point being it would have to happen immediately, right? Because eventually you're going to build a board state that doesn't care about defensive Alexstrasza. But the point is, if you just went with Consecrate that turn, then you're not developing, for example, this 6/6. So suddenly, you know, there's only 6 or 7 power on board, and then there's defensive Alex.
Transport going to come out. Not a bad one. Not a bad one at all. The Hatchling going to help. Could put another taunt in the deck as well. Which is going to be a good draw. Is one of the issues with this deck is outside of Medivh's Atiesh, the the deck doesn't run any mid to late game minions. It's all, what do I get from Filans? What can I maybe discover from Cabal Courier?
Right.
Stuff like that. So you don't have a reliable late game minion base. But that's definitely going to help.
Aldor is a useful draw here. Just generally counting in this spot. Kalento will know that he's staring down at 15 here with both secrets in play. He'll know that one is Ice Barrier, one is Ice Block, so he'll know there's 15 damage that he needs to deal. And of course, his ultimate goal this game is just to pop up one by any means necessary, because then that puts that eye for an eye into an almost certainly game-winning position. We talked about last turn that he had the opportunity to do that, and now that our Ice Barriers come down, his task has just become a little bit trickier in terms of being able to get through that.
Yeah, especially because the minions on board, outside the Protector just aren't that powerful. We've got 1 attack from the Stonehill, 2 from the Murloc, and it's just nowhere near enough damage. Yeah, he's going to kill off the Talon Priest by the looks of things.
Yeah, and I think from Philippines' perspective as well, they will know by this point that there is an eye for an eye waiting for them this game, because, there was a board that had Grime Street Protector and Stonehill Defender on it. Right?
Kodo, yeah.
If it was Getaway Kodo, it would have been played. Redemption would have been a weak pick in this kind of scenario anyway, if there wasn't a Tyrion in hand, which they almost certainly know there isn't. So you're very, very quickly narrowing this secret down in hand to being exactly eye for an eye, and Philippines have to try their very, very best to beat eye for an eye, which is not the easiest thing to do in the world if you are some kind of Ice Block mage.
Yeah, it's definitely a rough one, and these options are rough picks as well. Nothing really stands out. Mirror Entity's okay, but the issue is with 2 secrets already down, it's not like you can even play fast enough to bluff out that one's an Ice Barrier, and then you just play like Tyrion into it or something. Because that generally happens quite a lot. If you play the secret fast enough, they generally, a lot of people won't catch that it's actually one played from a Discover, so they're like, oh, 1 or 2 secrets, it's Ice Block or Ice Barrier.
Yeah, because, I mean, a lot of people, even if the climb towards Legend or even in Legend, they're just, they're playing while they're just watching a stream, or, they're playing on their laptop while they're watching TV or something. They're not meticulously hand-tracking the opponents. When you're in a 4 versus 4 team tournament, there is a very good chance that there is at least one person on the opposing team whose job it is just purely to hand track and just make sure they're making every possible read and picking up on every piece of information that the opponent is giving to them.
Okay, so Rockpool Hunter's coming down. Perhaps buff just the little 1/1 Silverhand Murloc. Nothing too impactful though. Kalento's probably really wanting the rest of his big dudes. Again, we imagine there's Curator in the deck. There's Tyrion left. Maybe even something else as well. How do I think about Counterspell?
He does. He does have to be concerned with Counterspell here, but obviously getting the eye for an eye Counterspell does not feel ideal. But, Kalento here just saying, you know what? I don't need this eye for an eye this game. I had my chance to, 2 or 3 turns ago to make this an eye for an eye game where I just put them to 1 health and then played the eye for an eye and went from there. I want to make sure this consecration goes through. That feels much, much more important to me right now. My opponent is just out of cards, so this is more or less just a regular game of Hearthstone where we just fight for board control. Yeah. And in that case, the eye for an eye is going to do nothing, and I would much, much rather play around the potential of Counterspell in this spot and just go ahead and make sure the consecration goes through.
Yeah, and Arcane Sight's a really nice pickup here for the Philippines. It would cycle a little bit deeper into the deck with the Matriarch out being drawn. Yeah, just random Matriarch in the deck. Why not? Just drop it. Problem is now, because the Rockpool buffing the token, Matriarch ping doesn't really do much except give yourself 1 damage if you ping face.
It can clear the secret that you're pretty confident is eye for an eye at this point. It would be a weird board to suddenly drop your Getaway Kodo on the Redemption on that you've been holding.
Noble sacrifice against Mage.
Yeah, it just wouldn't seem to make a lot of sense. So it would also feel really weird if the Philippines can't quite work out what happened last turn. Because, when you're looking at the perspective from the other side, understanding that your opponent was playing around Counterspell in that spot is actually a difficult read to make anyway. So Philippines might not be 100% clear on what was happening anyway.
This Volk Potion is now going to be an option, though. Can actually Volt Potion ping off the Protector. This saves a lot of damage, and again, has the idea that, well, the block might not get procced. Spirage, though.
Could have Frostbolted for the full board clear. Chose not to. It's not a huge difference because the minion could always be generated to play it anyway. But now Ukraine very, very wisely, safe in the knowledge that Vaporize has been eliminated, Counterspell has been eliminated, Ice Block is of course the other secret that's in play, so I think they might actually be exactly down to Spellbender at this point, and if that Spike Ridge Steed was played, it would have been in a complete mess.
Not gonna lie, I pulled that off before and it is glorious. Stonehill Defender though is pretty good. Let's see if he gets one of the big boy taunts.
Well, the Polymorph has now been picked up by Staz, so even one of the big boys here could potentially make a mess and doesn't get any of them.
Get that stubborn Gastropod on the board. So powerful, it can kill anything.
Is it just Dirty Rat time? It's the biggest minion. Is there anything you're looking to pull out for value at this point? Probably not.
Well, I'm thinking, do you try and go for Alexstrasza because you have the Aldor Peacekeeper as well?
That's fair.
So you can just negate a potential self-heal?
Yeah, it's true.
And there is cards that have been held in hand for a long, long time here.
Yeah.
So Clento gets the news that is, in fact, no minions in hand, so doesn't have to use the Aldor Peacekeeper, but that Spike Ridge must be the most frustrating card to have in hand at the moment.
Yeah, I was trying to think, are there any cards in deck that they can use to clear the Spellbender and then drop the Spike Ridge off?
Spike Ridge is just dead.
It's like Blessing of Kings, if that's in there, you'd have to like give your opponent a Blessing of Kings so that you could then Spike Ridge Steed.
And that's your whole turn.
Yes.
Ooh. Spellbender, new best secret against Pardid.
Maybe he's teched in a humility to go with those Kodos.
Nice, there's Alexstrasza. One turn too late for the Dirty Rat to get it pulled, so this does give him a few more options here.
Very long, drawn-out game again. Both players, or both teams, playing very slowly in this matchup. And Kalento in particular has definitely, you know, taken his foot off the gas a little bit over the last few turns, where he could have just really gone in for the kill with the Eye for an Eye, has decided that he can just go card for card value in this spot, and it's looking like that might have just been a misevaluation of the situation, because Philippines are just slowly climbing back into this.
I think there are still 2 couriers left in the deck as well. That's the 8 couriers, right?
No, didn't one of them show us the Dynamancer?
Yeah, the one that, yeah.
That guy,
yeah. Yeah, okay, so there's, I think, 1 courier left. Is there Babbling Book still in this list?
I mean, who knows? It's hard to say.
I mean, they're common, right?
They are relatively common, but not 100%. Yeah. And when we've seen Volcanic Potion and Polymorph, for example, both in there. I don't think the Volt Potion was taken from a
Just
glyph.
thinking what's left to get like more value or more damage for Stars and Philippines here. Because although it looks good in terms of, well, I can self Alexstrasza, you know, that's great. But Kalento can just make unlimited minions for the whole game. You're like, is Philippines ever going to be able to kill him and actually finish this game? Curator is a absolutely amazing pickup. We've been talking about it all game. And let's see what he's got left to even draw, though.
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure whether he's drawn both Primordial Drakes already. I knew there's 1 Megasaur left, Hydrologist as well coming out. There was likely to be Murlocs left over, but it looks like however many Drakes were in the deck have all been drawn so far, because no Dragon has come out to play. But once again, Kalento, after taking a backseat for a while, has now ramped up the aggression, and he's looking back in fairly comfortable control of the game.
Yeah, we like seeing Hydrologist into Redemption so that when the Murloc gets pinged, it comes back. That sets up for the Gentle Megasaur next turn. No? No?
Seems ambitious, man.
Look, sometimes you got to be ambitious, okay? Ooh. See? Murloc could survive, right?
Would it?
Was it played?
Ping it afterwards, right?
That's the whole turn, though, isn't it? That's value.
Just not doing anything else this turn anyway.
No, Flame Strike is going to be coming down. You have to trade off into the Curator as well, reduce that damage down. And this Matriarch is just a beast in every sense of the word. Just having that much health means you can just trade into the Curator after taking some damage anyway and still contest the Dirty Rat evenly.
What's hilarious as well is that Eye for an Eye is still in play, which means, you know, the primary game plan with Eye for an Eye of just get the mage opponent to 1 and checkmate the game almost that way is still available.
So Holy Wrath into a 4-drop to face will do it. One of those teched Holy Wraths we see. Getaway Coda now is a more likely pickup, I would say. It's a chance for redemption because, you know, I think pretty sure the only minion left potentially in the deck, or one of the very few, is Alexstrasza. Just go for it. Intriguing. interesting. I wonder how good Getaway Coda was, though. If the Dirty Rat dies, you get to just potentially pull something out again.
No gain of stats here from the Gentle Megasaur, but Wind Fury looks like a lot of damage being pushed through on the following turn, and he just needs to connect potentially for that magic number in one turn. Knows exactly what the secret makeup is right now. There is one Ice Block, and remember, one Spellbender in play right now that Ukraine identified perfectly, and that's why we have seen this Spike Ridge Steed just sit in hand as a completely dead card for the entire game.
Something we will not see this turn is Pyroblast Face, as that would end the game because of this eye for an eye. There definitely needs to be a ping at some point.
Yes.
Because you can't let yourself be forced into any damage on one health. So the ping needs to happen preferably before the Alexstrasza as well.
And it's actually kind of crazy that Philippines have just been forced into positions for so long where they just haven't even had 2 mana spare to be able to ping the face, especially when they've had a hand size that was so limited. It's not like they've had a bunch of resources that they could play from hand. They've actually been very, very nailed down as to what they could do.
Yeah, now suddenly because of that last turn, Kalento's put himself back again in a position where it's like, okay, surely they can't win now. Because there's too many questions that need to be asked. The second secret means that Kalento's going to get at least some form of value. Yeah, he could end up with a 1-1 back in hand, but still, it's still something to help proc towards the block, right?
There must be a way.
It's going to go for the self-Alexstrasza by looks things. Oh. Alexstrasza 1-1. I don't think you can give it 15 health, Staz.
Interesting. A unique... isn't this just essentially conceding the game in this spot? Or is there... Because from Philippines' perspective, haven't they themselves confirmed that this is Eye for an Eye that's in play?
I believe so, because there's not much else, right? They've attacked, so it's not Noble Sack. It's not Redemption.
Oh, I think potentially they were just giving themselves the opportunity to maybe play for a draw if they could get Alexstrasza to connect.
Like Pyroblast?
Yeah, but even then, it just seems really, really unlikely, right?
Yeah. Because it's just not enough on the board, right?
Yeah.
Like, there's just not enough there. There's a 1-4 defending against a huge board of minions.
What a weird game. Very,
I felt like if they were going to
unusual
aggressively
game of cards,
Alexstrasza, then we should have saved us all the time and conceded a few turns ago.
True. So there goes the ice block. There is 1 health, and an Eye for an Eye that has been played, what, 5 or 6 turns ago at this point, is just still in play, offering the checkmate situation. And Gluttonous Ooze would actually be a potential way to get themselves out of this mess if Kalento were to make the mistake of playing a weapon.
Courier into a Great Healing Potion to the enemy's face for 12.
There you go.
So, Eye for an Eye is going to finish up this game, and Kalento, a very much back and forth game, I feel. I feel like there were moments in that game where I thought, each team was going to win at any given situation, but it just, I don't really know what happened towards the end there. I think Kalento just got the Murlocs and the second Megasaur out.
Yeah.
I think the Curator was the key.
I think Curator was the key too, but I really like the mid-game turn where Kalento just kind of... I mean, it's weird to say because the Eye for an Eye actually ended up winning him the game, but on the turn he played the Eye for an Eye, he was willing to just throw that away to counterspell.
Yeah.
That was what he played it first for. That's why it was in play early, essentially. Conventional matchup wisdom would say, don't play it until you pop your opponent at 1. So they can't just ping face and get rid of it. But he was willing to throw it away to counterspell in that spot just so he could get his consecration to go through so he could maintain board control, which is a very different way of looking at that matchup. But it turned out that he just maintained enough pressure through the late game turns to be able to pop that ice block anyway. Yeah,
and we're going to see the next game coming up is going to be Chalk for Philippines versus Nyria for Ukraine. Warrior versus Rogue. I feel like 2 of the top dogs of the expansion going at it now. And, this is very weird classes to go against each other because you've got the usual Taunt Warrior versus Pirate Warrior options, but then you have the Quest Rogue versus Miracle Rogue and how those 4 deck types go against each other in matchup.
Yeah, one of you's run into trouble in this spot, basically. If it's Quest Warrior going up against Quest Rogue, and that's a big advantage for the Quest Rogue. If it's the other way around and it's Pirate Warrior, then that's a big advantage for the Pirate Warrior. So one of you has ended up with a matchup that you might not want to be playing. And what I will say is, from Chalk's perspective, he has his Warrior paired with the Warlock. So it might be that he's got that kind of strategy for his 2 decks where it's like, okay, I won't play Warlock. Like, I'm just never going to play that.
Yeah,
it's bad. It's a bad
Warrior,
deck,
for example.
So I'm just going to have a warrior deck, my opponent is going to have to mulligan for a weird 50-50 anyway, and I'm confident in whichever my warrior deck is that it can get the job done in most matchups. But that might also mean that he's the one that didn't have much choice in this situation, meaning that if it is Quest Warrior, he probably would have had to pick it anyway because he doesn't have any confidence in his other deck, which is Warlock.
Might see Handlock again for the second time today. You see the players getting ready. Naria, just chilling. I'm just looking at what those things are in the background. I can see the Hearthstone poster. Now the chair's in the way. Thanks, Naria. Trying to have a little nosy. But yeah, Naria's change to approaching the game really fascinates me, to be honest. We were speaking to him in the Bahamas for the Winter Championships.
Yeah.
He's actually like, yeah, I actually just play for like a couple of hours a day and watch a lot of Hearthstone and then just sort of think about the game a lot more than actually sit and, grind out 12, 15-hour days.
Yeah.
And I think he's like, yeah, I actually feel just better for it. I think I play better when I'm more, taking it a bit more relaxed, a bit more easygoing, as opposed to really, really going hard on it. So it just goes to show that every player is kind of different when it approaches the game. Look at a player like Tyler, for example, playing for Netherlands. It's like you can just turn Twitch on and he is just streaming probably now at somebody, maybe not because his game's coming up, but he just streams, just put so many hours into the game. And then you look at Nyria, made to Winter Championships, plays a couple hours a day.
Yeah.
Like, it really is different things work for different people.
Right, and it's not like he plays a couple of hours a day and then he just goes to the beach. Like, he's still watching Hearthstone, he's still talking to other people, he's still theorizing matchups, etc., etc.
Most famous beaches in Ukraine.
It's just, I mean, I'm sure there are.
The problem.
At least, some lakeside beaches or something. But, he is at least a player that shares an opinion that a lot of other people do, that, Hearthstone is actually a game that you can practice passively, I guess is a way to put it, that you can actually just watch streams interactively and theorize what you would do in any given
think
position.
about the game,
You're still gathering knowledge even just from watching a stream. You're scouting the meta, you're seeing what tech choices people are playing with their decks. And if you're watching another high-level player play, you're listening to someone talk about a different perspective on the game than you might have, which is very healthy for you as well. But as you mentioned, there are players that go completely the other way, like Tyler and obviously Standardacci's 45,000 wins or whatever he has stacked up, and it works for them. But this method obviously is working for Nyria. He's in a real regenesis of his career, honestly, just pushing back to the dizzy heights he was once at. So I agree with you. The change in stance definitely seems to be working out well.
Yeah, and so does the draw. I caught a quick glimpse. Firefly, Igneous Elemental, Shadow Step.
Solid.
Reasonable. I would probably take that draw if I was the rogue here. And also, we all have our thoughts on Quest Rogue as a deck, but the different builds do interest me. They generally do interest me in terms of...
Oh, yeah, same, actually.
Yeah, we saw Voodoo Doctor before, and that actually... The second I saw it, and, you guys were discussing about how the matchup is versus the Discover Mage, I was like, Voodoo Doctor would actually terrify me as that, because I play a lot of the mage side.
Yeah.
And a lot of the times you go all in and say, I will draw Burn as my next card and just win the game.
Yeah.
Whereas with that Voodoo Doctor, I was like, oh, okay, this is actually horrible. But, again, here we see Ignis Elemental, a very simple way to proc the quest, basically. Very simple. You don't have to do tons of bounces. You just get extra minions. And it works for some, but I've actually heard a lot of players say it's not that good because it can be kind of played around. Your opponent just doesn't kill it.
Right. And Nyria here, interesting play, shadow stepping the Firefly and not replaying it. There is a very high chance that he completes the quest with Flame Elementals this game, not with Fireflies, although that has just very much changed with that draw that he's just picked up. But he's kind of keeping the opponent in the dark here, now replaying the Firefly and picking up the new Flame Elemental after revealing that the Ignis Elemental means that he's probably just going to get the job done with Flame Elementals as opposed to with the Fireflies themselves.
Also, Chalk has a glorious t-shirt on.
He does. Mustaches do, in fact, rule.
So good. But yeah, Nyria has actually just got an insane opening here. I will be pretty impressed if if Philippines can pull this one out of the bag, because it's just so straightforward, especially because the Tar Creeper does kill the Ignis Elemental, on if Nyria chooses to trade
On
into
Nyria's
it.
turn.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Like that is one thing you can actually try and avoid is just not kill it if possible, because then it just stalls a turn, stalls a turn, stalls a turn. And I've actually seen players like eviscerate their own. I think we saw Hotfarm do it in week 1.
I think so. Yeah.
Like eviscerated his own Ignis element because he's like, I need those cards. Like this is how I'm proccing my quest. But that is even a turn's worth of messing about, mana usage, and damage used. So that's kind of a small victory for the opponent.
It's also one interaction. You were talking about how you're interested in the different builds, and I very much am as well. One of the fringe builds that I don't think we've seen too much in HGG is the Doomsayer builds that just plays Doomsayers early on, and that's one of the fringe interactions that people don't really think about with the Doomsayers in that deck as well, where if your opponent just says, okay, you just keep your 2/3, I'm not going to let you activate that, you just play a Doomsayer next to it the next turn, and then suddenly you're just killing it yourself.
I love it. They try and like deal with the Doomsayer to stop your board dying as opposed to their own. It's like, no!
It's the kind of ridiculous scenarios this deck creates, Raven.
Yeah. And look at this. Said he was keeping him in the dark. He's about to light him up with these flame elementals now, though, because this is just actually insane. And also, these next few draws are going to be key for Nyria as well. He can build a big board. He's got a lot of minions, of course. The board can be cleared and helped clear with cards on along the lines of Brawl. But if there's any sort of prep or charge minions, suddenly charge minions plus vanish, the game just ends. It's absolutely like incredible to watch. Whether you're on the right side of it or not, it's actually still impressive how much damage output this deck can do now.
And I just want to break down some of the decision points here for Nyria, because it has looked so far like this has been a very, very straightforward game for him. He just drew the right amount of bounces and Fireflies and got the job done. But as early as turn 1, he played Firefly instead of Quest, in case it was Pirate Warrior, right? That he was up against. He just wanted that board presence in play. Then, despite fully intending to complete his quest with Flame Elementals, he started bouncing the Firefly, because that still gives him the Flame Elementals anyway, but it also generates extra resources for him, because he'd found out it was then Quest Warrior. So he wanted to bounce a resource
more flexible than the Ignis Elemental.
Right. Since then, he's then held a Shadow Step Firefly in his hand the entire time. So he had his initial push on this turn where he was activating the quest, where he put a bunch of minions into play. But then he's saying, okay, if you Brawl this board, if you Whirlwind Sleep with the Fishes this board, I still have another 0 mana card that I can play on the same turn with my quest and not lose tempo. So yes, it's been a very, very powerful draw, but pinpoint accuracy with the decisions from Nyria to navigate his way through.
Yeah, I've played a lot of Quest Rogue against them on ladder, and guess what? A lot of them actually just mess up and lose because of it.
Yeah.
Because although it's seemingly straightforward in terms of what your goal is, you can mess up very easily and give your opponent openings to take the win. But Nyria seems to be pretty tight with his Quest Rogue deck. Indeed, he's got 4 or 5 attack minions on the board so far. One's 5/2, so reasonably easy to deal with. But this is just so much pressure. The Brewmaster not going to get too much value in itself. It's nothing good to bounce, but you've got to imagine there's like a ton of charges left in the deck. A Pirate for a start would be insane, because we've not had any patches yet.
Yes, any given Pirate. But maybe this is the first play that I want to potentially question from Nyria, because then that 0 mana Firefly that he's had the whole time, he's just gone ahead and played it and exposed it to a board where it can die if the Philippines would like to kill it. And that's his last resource generator in his entire hand right now. And he has a Youthful Brewmaster and a Vanish to potentially go along with it and just keep picking him up those extra 5/5s that he'll need to keep the pressure up. So this is a little bit risky from Nyria, but as you mentioned, there are still a ton of cards left in his deck that he can pair with bouncers just fine. Be they charge minions, be they novice engineers, whatever build of the deck he's put together.
Yeah, and also now, once you get to these turns as Quest Rogue, you actually start to really appreciate how cheap all your deck is. You can like play 2 cards, vanish them, play 4 muck. It gets like really, really stupid. Mimic Pod, pretty good pickup.
I mean, all right, Nyria's a genius. Just identified that his Firefly wasn't going to die that turn anyway. Just got it on board as 5 free damage that he can now bounce again if he does want to. Mimic Pod being picked up as well. That's the kind of value that you do need in this spot. The only real way you lose this matchup to Taunt Warrior is if your hand just runs dry and you just run out of value. You're forced to quest on a minion that doesn't repeatedly generate value every time you bounce it, and then you don't hit your Novice Engineers or your Mimic Pods, and you just kind of run out of cards. That doesn't look like it's going to happen here to Nyria.
Yeah, and speaking of the way the matchup goes, we've talked a lot about the Quest Rogue and Nyria's decisions. What do you think? Is there anything Chalk can even do at this point, or does he have to just hope Nyria doesn't have it, as opposed to Chalk doing anything too crazy to get the win ahead.
Pretty much. I mean, he has to play as defensively as he can and just try and march towards his own quest, because at that point, like, you know, again, if you can line the quest up alongside a Brawl, you see Nyria just taking a good chunk of damage, just gaining full board control here. So if you can get that quest to line up yourself, then suddenly, you know, 1 or 2 snipes with the hero power can get the job done.
It's a long way away without the quest being equipped, though.
Yeah, it really is. But I mean, at this point, like, how are you going to get the job done otherwise? Like,
yeah,
it's just stall and stall and stall and try and find some form of board control and then try and push damage, because there's no way you win the game anymore through purely stalling the game out.
Definitely going to be a tough one. Nyria's still got the Mimic Pod in hand and now the Firefly after the bounce. There's already 21 damage represented. That's most of Chalk's health here. You know, even and the ability, the dagger's so amazing, because it looks like Rogue always has dagger. It means it can do 6 damage to a taunt, which is very, very important, and also push them to really awkward numbers.
Yeah.
So it means that suddenly, you dagger twice, then 7's the break point as opposed to 5 a lot of the time, which does change a lot of the outcome when you get early damage in with minions as well. So all this is very, very important, and being able to potentially hit through this Curator as well is going to be huge going forward.
Still, good clear here with Sleep with the Fishes at least being able to take the majority of the damage off the board. But with another Firefly in hand, a Mimic Pod in hand, a Vanish to bounce a high-value minion if he needs to, or return a board. Return a board if it does get built up from the Philippines is going to be a massive advantage. And Curator into Primordial Drake, usually one of the big power curves for Chalk's deck in the Quest Warrior, is just probably not going to be good enough anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I guess here you can see Hungry Crab, Firefly, maybe even Mimic Pod being played this turn. Go aggressive. Next turn you can go deckhand with whatever minions are left. Go in, and then if that doesn't clear, if that doesn't win the game, you can actually just vanish and play the deckhand and the patches again.
So if you were to just deckhand and vanish that turn, for example, you'd be pushing 15 and get 10 damage back in your hand. You could have also then developed one mana guy back on the board to represent 5. Which is, a little optimistic in terms of trying to get there.
I think I like it
turns.
this way.
This play does look a lot stronger.
Because you can play the deckhand, patches gets pulled, vanish, deckhand patches.
Yeah.
And it means you can re-dagger as well. So you keep getting these dagger pokes in, which is very important, as I said earlier.
Right.
So yeah, this is a really nice. The Curator is an option now for Chalk, and to be honest, one of the only options here. The only thing about Curator is it softens the minions up potentially for a Primordial Drake. But we can see that it's just not really going to matter, especially with a backstab as well.
It's just lethal, right?
Yeah.
20 damage and then 10 more gets bounced. 5 more gets bounced because you only have mana left to play 1 more. But yeah, it still looks like plenty.
Huh? You can play both, right? The patches and the deckhand.
Deckhand and then vanish, and then you have 1 mana remaining.
Oh, sure. Yeah, sorry, yeah. Still, very, very strong position here. Could even just wait if he needed to, he could have waited and just played Battlefing, gone even wider on the board. 2 5/5s for 2 mana now. So all going up very easily here. And
Chalk's just pieced out.
He's done.
He just pieced out.
So now it's the chair versus Ukraine. Will the chair fare any better than Chalk? We're about to find out.
And it looks like it's Patches that gets to do the honor here. Charging out, 5 more damage to face. That is a horrible matchup for the Quest Warrior to queue into. And as I mentioned at the start, that might have just been the situation where it was the bad faith deck being put with the good faith deck for the Philippines. It was, don't want to play Warlock, so I'll just put it up with one of the best decks in the game in Quest Warrior.
Rogue.
And just hope it's good enough. And they just ran into that Rogue pick. And it was a pretty easy read from the other side to say, okay, he's not playing Warlock. I'm just going to play my Rogue, hope this is Quest Warrior that I come up against. Worked out perfectly for Nyria. And as with most things so far this tournament, things working out perfectly for Ukraine.
Yeah, that was just 3-0. Done. Easy. That Hippie didn't even get to play.
Is that the day off?
Yeah, I love Hippie as well.
Yeah.
Would like to have seen him, but I have no doubt that he was with the team, of course, talking. But yeah, just to quickly recap, Nick Chipper took the win over Karakute with that very dominant performance of the Priest. Kalento, very close game versus Staz with the Discover Mage and his Murloc Paladin. And then we just saw Nyria. I mean, kind of feel bad for Chalk, to be honest, because what we saw was kind of how that matchup just goes almost all of the time.
Yeah.
I have not really seen any Quest Warriors do relatively well versus Quest Rogue unless Quest Rogue accidentally mulligan the quest or something. Like the matchup is honestly like that difficult. So kind of feel a little bit bad, but that's how it goes sometimes. And guys, I asked for .tp and we got him. I believe he is on the line ready for an interview. Hello, friend. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can.
Hey, so
I guess we might as well make you do something, right? You just sit there and just watch your team win for 3 games. Jeez.
So
I was racing the model.
Of course. Yeah.
So I have no doubt you were all talking together, of course, but another 3-0 victory there for you guys. So huge congratulations. Were you comfortable throughout the whole series? Were you comfortable going into the match overall against Philippines? Because we saw Nick Chipper right at the start just do some. Was it? Did you tell him to? It sounds like something you would do.
It wasn't me, but I was glad he did it.
Okay. So were there any worrying moments at all in that series? I think the Mage versus Kalento's Murloc Paladin was the closest game. Was there ever a worry? Because that got a little bit dicey.
Yeah, it wasn't worry. We were comfortable, but when they get 3-6 down from Firewind's Portal, it was a bit harder because they get 3-6-0, 6-9 down. So
yeah, it's definitely a lot of extra value.
Talk to me just quickly as well about the turn that you actually played Eye for an Eye. You were playing around Counterspell, right? Like you really wanted the Consecrate to go off?
Counterspell or what's it called? New secret. Mana Bind.
Oh, Mana Bind.
Yeah, Mana Bind.
Makes sense.
We knew we had a second, possibly second Eye for an Eye, so...
So you guys are now 3-0 in your group so far. Are you just going to not lose a match for the whole group stage?
We hope.
I expected more from you. I thought you were just easy.
No, we hope we'll do 3-0 and 3-0.
Okay, looking forward to
seeing
seeing
it. We'll win for sure, but
we'll win for sure.
What score, I don't know.
Okay, no problem. Well, I have the utmost confidence in you and the team, Hippie. I appreciate you taking the time to talk to us. Congratulations on the win, and we'll catch up with you next time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Always great to hear from Hippie. I love him. From
He's
the
great.
first time we met him at Winter, previous time round, it was Winter, right?
Winter Championships.
Yeah. Like all the way back
Right,
then.
yeah.
Very quiet guy. It's like to me he was polite, of course, everything. But then the more events we saw him at, it was like, oh, okay, you're actually a bit of a troll.
Yeah, slowly, moment by moment, the inner troll just came creeping out, and his burgeoning friendship with Pavel has definitely not done anything to stop that troll evolution.
Not at all. We do see a bit of a recap on how the match went overall. We got to see the cute elementals one more time for you guys.
Monster!
And now...
Monster!
Get your Bible thumps ready in the chat. That was absolutely brutal.
Why would you show us that again? Production, please. There are children watching. That is so traumatic.
But Nick Chipper, I mean, from this point pretty much onwards, just wasn't even a problem. Like, look at it. Even when the board was built up again, Dragonfire Potion, done, go again. There was still Alakir wasn't used. There was still a Hex. There was still Ysera. Everything available. Very, very dominant performance from Nick Chipper. Now, this one got a little bit more dicey.
It did, and it was this Medivh Valley Firelands portal that came down. This is the moment, I believe, that Hippie was talking about, where this was the Halazeel. It was the Dial Hatchling that came out earlier, where that was the first point, he said, where they really felt like they might be in trouble when the Hatchling came out. There's the equality play here from Kalento to maintain board control, just pull out 2 more Murlocs here, and I think this was fairly quickly snowballed into the second Gentle Megasaur at one point, and that was what enabled Kalento to eventually clutch out the game. Very strangely with an Eye for an Eye setting up the checkmate against Ice Block, but it was an Eye for an Eye that was played 5 turns earlier, and there was no time in those 4 or 5 turns that Stars considered pinging the face to clear it.
Yeah, and this kind of game is why I talk a lot about this deck in terms of just burn them. Because you don't deal with any of this. Like, a lot of the time, it sounds really bad, but a lot of the time, they either have tons of heal, forbidden healings, etc., or if they don't, you just win. And you don't worry about any of this crazy late game stuff that can happen. We do see the last game, which was you know, pretty awkward from the start for Chalk and very difficult to even do anything of. We talked so much about Nyria's turns because he was just dictating the flow of the game overall.
Absolutely.
And that's why we didn't talk much about what Chalk could possibly do, because there's not a lot he could do, to be completely honest. Like, the game, you know, didn't play itself out. We discussed Nyria actually, you know, had a few choice moments where he had to, you know, make the right calls to get him even further ahead.
Yes.
But once the quest comes down and you have this kind of hand, it all went pretty smoothly. Chalk just walked away at this point, just finishes brew.
Just didn't want to see it happen.
No.
Just a nice, relaxing brew, as you said. But yeah, again, I think Nyria did play that exceptionally in the end. He had a powerful hand dealt to him, but it still took some knowledge of how to play.
Yep.
And you know, you mentioned that you very rarely see the Quest Warrior win that matchup. It does take a mistake quite often from the Quest Rogue. Just, you know, bouncing the wrong minion, getting too impatient, going all in on a minion that just, you know, doesn't get there in terms of generating value.
Or just a nightmarish draw, right? You know, like a horrendous opening hand from the Rogue. I believe we can check out the groups, though, and see how it stacks up as Ukraine continue to dominate. This is truly scary. Hippie was like, yeah, of course we're going to just win every match, but I'm not sure what the scores will be. I'm like, okay. Currently 9-2 in game record, 3-0 in match record, looking absolutely fantastic, whereas Philippines now are 1-2 overall, so they've took quite the blow themselves.
They have, yeah, and Ukraine honestly just sitting pretty, like, almost job done at this point. It happens to say, you know, they might just be fighting for seedings at this point and just continuing to take joy in crushing the dreams of the other countries, as both Nick Chipper and Dr. Hippie there clearly did enjoy enormously.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked a lot about Ukraine being, you know, a crazily powerful team, and you kind of just see it. You know, the 3-0 in groups, all the wins have been almost effortless to a certain extent. You can't really argue with it to a large extent. You've got players like Hippie, like Kalento, who's just been on a tear recently. Nick Chipper, again, maybe the least well-known one, but, you know, incredibly impressive player as well. So it's just, I just don't see them stopping anytime soon.
And it's a good thing for the game, honestly, and it's a great advocate for the meta to when you know, start looking through some of these groups, you see, you know, USA topping their group, Russia topping their group, Ukraine topping their group, etc. These are the countries that you would expect to be doing well in those groups based on the skill levels of the players in them. And hey, guess what? They're performing.
Yeah, it's apparently you can be good at Hearthstone. Just so you're aware, this is going to be it for this match. We've got one more match coming up for you at home, so don't go anywhere. We'll be back with some Hearthstone Global Games very soon.
We're almost there. Quiet down, everyone. This is not like any of our previous expeditions. This will be far more ambitious. We're stepping into a land of primordial wonder. Infused with astonishing elemental energies. The plant life here holds very unusual properties. So don't touch anything. And while you may be excited to see the local fauna, you might want to make sure they don't see you. Because their powers of adaptation are devastating. Make no mistake, we will be tested at every turn. But if we stay on our guard, we might just survive. Now then, are you ready? Then let's journey into Ongoro Crater.